Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another episode of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co-hostess, Anna, and I'm here with...
Hey, Griefleans and Frightlings, it's Margaret and Anna and I. We are going back. We have been to this place 2 times already without you, and we're hoping our 3rd time there, you're going to join us. Anna, where are we visiting today?
Well, much like the video game it was based on, we've taken several trips and always somehow end up back there. We are talking about Silent Hill today. And before we get too far into it, there are lots and lots of triggers. So, to start, there's violence against children, generational trauma, familial abuse, child abuse, sexual abuse, community abuse, socio-economic abuse, religiosity, which, that's one of my favorite things to talk about. Also, the trauma of childhood, the trauma of assisting a child through their experiences, parenting non-biological children, and the responsibilities that come along with that. What else?
Bullying.
Underground explosions.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Fire.
Yeah, and just like your regular super duper creepy monsters too. Lots of those in that movie.
Yeah. Demons, references to hell.
So pretty much a lot of our standard horror stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So jumping right in, and as we're talking about Silent Hill, would you say that Silent Hill is in hell, purgatory, or some other place?
I think it's its own place. I think it has its own spot. Because I feel like, well, okay, and we've talked about this before, full disclosure, I went to a Catholic university for my undergrad. Took a lot of theology and philosophy classes, but for me, the fundamental understanding of purgatory is essentially you're in limbo. So you're kind of waiting to see where you end up going. But it's not necessarily too far up the tree of success or too far down into the underworld. You're just kind of in the middle. I think in a sense that Silent Hill is a hell of their own that they've created, but it's its own separate entity. What are your thoughts?
I took it as like it's some sort of form of hell. Like they are being punished for what they did to Alyssa.
Yes, and poor Alyssa. Yes. Let's talk about this sweetheart, little angel child that didn't deserve any of these things. So we start the film and she's having nightmares with her adopted family. Yeah, and
she goes by Sharon.
Yeah, she's Sharon, and then we find out more about her. Eventually she goes missing. Her adopted mother needs to find her. She ends up finding out things about Silent Hill, heeds the warning of people near the town, and eventually goes and ends up being trapped in Silent Hill as well, trying to save her child that she loved so much. And
yes,
we didn't actually talk about this before, but just saying that the reverence that Sharon's mom has for her and the love and care when compared and contrasted to her biological mom is absolutely outstanding.
Well, they say it twice in the movie. Mother is the name of God in all children, or in children's.
Yeah, in the eyes of a child. And she spares her biological mother when she sets the entire church aflame, but I do wonder, and like, she spares her bio mom, but how does she look at her adopted mom? You know what I mean? Because she chose her. Like, that was all the good that was left of Alyssa that went out into the world, that ended up at the orphanage, that chose this family to adopt her. Because I guess somehow she knew that she would be nurtured in the right way. And I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I didn't catch that. Like, she chose her mom.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say that, that makes sense that she chose her mom that did love her.
Mm-hmm.
Why she decided to take her to Silent Hill
Yeah.
is
Well, and
a bit
maybe,
questionable.
yeah. And maybe it's, you know, it was, she loves me so much, she'll protect me,
Hmm.
not like
Yes.
my biological mom treated me.
Or maybe the nightmares will stop if we
Mm-hmm.
get there and she's able to see this town
Mm-hmm.
and whatever it is. The next question for you is in the beginning of the movie, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they're on their way. Rose is taking Sharon to Silent
Mm-hmm.
Hill. They start to be pursued by the police officer. Then all three of them in Silent Hill. Do you think the three of them died? Because we see like
Mm-hmm.
Alyssa or Rose's car. It doesn't really crash, but
Mm-hmm.
it swerves. The motorcycle slides. Do you feel like the three of them died and that's how they ended up in Silent Hill, or some other supernatural thing happened?
I think that at the very least, they're all unconscious. Like something
Mm-hmm.
has happened to their consciousness that's allowed them to go to Silent Hill. I don't know if maybe necessarily they've died, but something has impaired their standard ADLs to a point where they are now in Silent Hill, and connected their consciousnesses as well.
Do you, and maybe you can explain this to me. So we know that Alyssa was bullied,
Mhm.
and we can get more into what the town does to her.
Mhm.
So then Sharon is what's good of Alyssa taken out
Yeah.
of Silent Hill to be adopted. And they say everything that happened to Alyssa was like 30 years ago.
Mhm.
So how do we, because Alyssa, or the little girl Alyssa and Sharon, they're both like what, 7, 8 years old?
Yeah. So,
How, what's the timeline there? Maybe you can help me
mhm.
understand that.
So essentially, kind of what's happened is they've been like everyone in Silent Hill has been experiencing this hell since the fire. And at some point, I think that Alyssa had a desire to be a mother, but also provide love that she never got should she have a child. So the way that she is, that's not feasible, right? Medically, it's not going to happen. She's not going to be able to leave the hospital and find someone, even if medically it were possible. So she's spiritually sending all of this energy into this creation who finds Rose. And that's how it happens. I think also, um, the fact that when you look at where you come from and when something really traumatic happens to you, you leave and you don't look back, right? And part of leaving the past behind us, we leave that terrible, awful part back there too, because we want to move on. So I think that Alyssa's physical form and her aging and her not having resolution, not having support, not working through it, not doing the trauma work, that is within her aging body, her getting older and continuing to live this nightmare alongside everyone else. That's why she's aging. But she's sending the good parts, the looking forward parts, the rebirth of who she is out into this world. And that's part of the reason there's such an age difference, too, because not only is it a spiritual rebirth, it's a physical rebirth as well.
Ooh, thank you for clarifying that. And I also really appreciate how you bring up trying to leave the trauma
Mm-hmm.
behind. And we see through Sharon's nightmares, through Sharon's drawings,
Mm-hmm.
the trauma is not left
Yeah.
behind. Sharon is still carrying the trauma of what happened
Mm-hmm.
to her mother. And that can happen with trauma as well. It can just keep
Absolutely.
resurfacing.
Yes. Don't run away from the past because it's going to catch up eventually. And
Mm-hmm.
um I love Silent Hill. What are your thoughts on the whole Alyssa and Sharon type of dichotomy? I'm just interested to know your take on these two separate characters who kind of started as one and I guess if you see the second movie, sort of end up back as one, sort of. Um,
I appreciate the vibe, the atmosphere that Silent Hill delivers. It definitely has that throughout the film. And I can see, right, if we look at Alyssa, that she really is battling,
yeah.
trying to hold the hope, hope for healing, hope that there is kindness in the world. With this part that is vengeful, there is this part that is so angry. And I also feel like anger gets a bad rap because so many people have been hurt by anger, or people that have unhealed stuff going on then use anger to hurt other people, where anger can be very healing when we're able to express our anger at those who hurt us and what they did, and be able to process those emotions of how, if we look at Alyssa, how her mom didn't save her, her mom didn't do the motherly job, her mother allowed her to be molested, bullied,
Yes.
burned, all these things happen. So she has this anger that she doesn't get to process, even the pain of being a burn victim, and the anger at the nurses. Nobody's there to help her, to be like, yes, this hurts, and this isn't intentional, and yes, you had this intentional, insidious pain thrusted upon you. You have this trauma. And working through our anger is part of how we heal our trauma. And when we work through that, where we don't hurt ourselves and we don't hurt others, because that's where anger gets a bad rap. I'm angry, so I'll self-harm. I'm angry, so I'm going to go yell at somebody else.
Absolutely. Well, and did you catch this? I know we've talked about it before, since this is, I think this is our second or third try with this one too. We have another one that we recently had to re-record again. In the movie, before they burn Alyssa, her biological mother is talking to the head of the church. And the first few times I saw the movie, when she referred to her as sister, I thought they meant it as a communal religious comment. But no, it is her sister, meaning that's Alyssa's aunt.
That's how I thought.
Yeah.
I always thought it was the aunt, and that just added to it.
Yes.
How we trust our family. I'm going to trust you to take care of my child because I can't.
Yeah.
And that makes Alyssa's trauma just so much more gut-wrenching, because a trusting adult
absolutely, like,
targeted her.
The toxicity of family. I mean, that's quite an example. And the thing too is, after the burning starts and her biological mom is like, oh my God, what have I done? She goes back and she's told, like, it's too late. I almost still feel like she should have done something. And I think that her having to be out in the town, she can't seek sanctuary or safety anywhere, is really part of her punishment, because that's her feelings of guilt and what happened to her child in live action every day.
Yes. Oh, I agree with that that's part of her punishment. And do you agree, or what do you think? Oftentimes, as people, somebody will wrong us, and it can be so powerful. It can be part of our healing when that person who wronged us realizes that they've made a mistake. So when mom realizes, and then she starts to maybe scream, no, you can't do this, give me back my baby, tries to fight people, because then maybe she doesn't save Alyssa from what happens. Alyssa has already experienced that her mom is trying to change something that can be powerful, because then we're like, okay, you didn't intend this and you tried to take it back and you couldn't. Then I don't know, you sent me to be with that's my other question. Do you feel that Christabella, or I think that's her name, she's a sadist?
I think that she has been so caught up in her delusion of self-grandeur that I think she's gone beyond sadism, just to the point of just full-on in control monster.
Like drunk on power, because it seems like she enjoys, like, when they burn, I can't think of the cop's name, she's like smiling, like when we even see what happens to Alyssa.
It's done. Yeah, it's just It's terrible.
It's almost like she's shocked, but this part of her that's like enjoying that her niece is being hurt.
Yeah. And the reason that Alyssa was picked on essentially was because she's a bastard. Who cares? Like, you know what I mean? Like, from our Western, we're going into 2025 society, single moms rock. Like, I don't understand what the problem is, but then this is a very one-sided, single-minded type of society in Silent Hill that they reside in. And I'm also kind of like, why didn't her mom just take her somewhere else, maybe to the city or something where people had broader, better viewpoints and there were more services and supports available for, single parents and persons in those situations. So to me, it's like, if you know that they're going to be abusive and horrible to your child, why do you want to be there?
I feel like as you talked about like the trauma of like the town, I feel like her mom then epitomizes the abuse victim. She's been abused by the community, so she can't even leave the community. And then we go back to your point about Alyssa picking a mother that hasn't been in that community. So when it comes to that community wanting to hurt her, it's not going to happen because she doesn't have that experience. And listeners, it can happen if we are raised in a religious community or an isolated community, a toxic community. It doesn't have to be religious. It impacts us because then, like Anna said, we can't do the things. I know saving my child is right. The community has already taught me that that's not okay. So now I can't do the things that are going to help my child, which then further traumatizes Alyssa.
Yes. Well, and further, the entire community is at these burnings. And as a thanatologist from that perspective, and having seen people die of normal causes and a few of abnormal causes in front of me, how despicable the community is from that perspective. Because a lot of people have seen dead bodies, but a very small percentage of that group has actually seen someone take their last breath and die in front of them. And it's a beautiful thing, but it is also a very difficult, horrific thing to see if it's natural causes. So to see someone writhing in agony, to smell their hair burning, the flesh melting off of their bones, the sickness in this community and how it's spreading is just completely vulgar to me. And I know that this really characterizes the community and the leaders in it. And I think they do a great job, because when you really sit down and think about how sick that is, to me, it just brings the movie and the video game to a completely different level.
Yes. Ooh, thank you for sharing. And I don't know, do you feel like it was intentional of the video game or the movie? Because as you were sharing that, I was thinking about the United States history where people would go watch people be hung. Or I think about that horrible video when they're like, we're getting rid of segregation. And the girl, right, she's scanning the crowd for a safe space. And she locks eyes with that white woman who I think spits at her or throws a rock, where it's like this mentality where people then are okay with harm happening to somebody, which is, like you said, it's horrific that we as people can get to a place where, oh, let's just watch this child burn. Let's watch this person hang. This is normal.
Yeah.
That's not normal. You have been desensitized. You have been indoctrinated into something that serves the community and not you or fellow humans.
Absolutely. And, another example of that is a movie that we did an episode about, that I will never be watching again, Blink Twice, when we have this character, the young guy, who stands there and does nothing while all these things are happening, right? The desensitization, well, I need to stick with my community and fit in. What'll happen to me if I stand up for what's right, and all these things. And it's really astounding how quickly that desensitization desensitized mindset can spread,
Mm-hmm.
not just in one's own thought process, but throughout an entire community, and how quickly it is. I mean, so many examples in film and in reality, it is like rapid fire.
Yes, that herd mentality,
Mm-hmm.
that falsehood again, that we are safer in the herd.
Mm-hmm.
So then we stay in the herd, and even how people get out of it, like the police officer, right? He tries to save Alyssa,
Yeah.
and yet he's still adamantly protecting this
Mm-hmm.
community and
Yeah.
not saying, look, I'm done. What the
Mm-hmm.
community done. If he had just shared that, maybe Alyssa wouldn't be holding people in hell. If he had said, we got super religious and we made some mistakes, and
Yeah.
I tried to save this young girl and this is what happened instead.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's again protecting
Mm-hmm.
the community, keeping them in
Yeah.
this hell.
And I almost wonder for the police officer if part of that is he believes they should all be punished for what they did. And also, he wants to make sure that outsiders don't find themselves in the community. So I'm wondering if maybe that has something to do with it. Also, just imagine being a responder to that scene, and that's what you walk in and find. I mean, he has to be dealing with his own immense sense
Mm-hmm.
of trauma and grief just by bearing witness to that. And
Yes.
every day when he gets ready, he just looks down at his hands and is reminded of it.
Yes.
And I can guarantee,
Oh, I like that take.
yeah, I can
Thank you.
guarantee they don't have any thanatologists in Silent Hill.
No, they're not processing their grief
No.
about their community,
Mm-mm.
the coal mines, about
Mm-mm.
however they got so caught in
Mm-hmm.
this right and wrong, and the belief that if you don't have a dad, you're a witch. Like that
Mm-hmm.
feels like a huge. I can see
Yeah.
where kids could think that,
Mm-hmm.
because kids make those far stretches.
Yeah.
And it was the adults that were encouraging
Mm-hmm.
the bullying
Yeah.
and took part in it.
Terrible. Yeah. And it's wild to think how in reality behavior can really just escalate so quickly to I want to say like a Silent Hill level. People get so caught up in their own belief systems, and they pass that on to their children. The children tend to exacerbate whatever they're being told, and then the adults are defending the children, and it just turns into this very, very distressing cycle.
Oh yeah, yeah, I agree.
But the good thing is, each person, and if you are listening, we all have the ability to break the bonds of family trauma and also socio-normative trauma from communities that are systemically dangerous to us. So there are supports and services available to work through those traumas and really to get into a more healthy, beneficial lifestyle.
Yes, and working through those. And I love how you bring up that we are impacted by, many of us have personal trauma, and depending on the intersectionalities that impact us, we then have institutional, systemic, historical, generational, all these other traumas that are impacting our daily life, and getting support so that we can work through them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do think that Silent Hill really it's a great game. It's a great movie. I think that it says more when you're reading between the lines than it does at face value. I feel like every time I rewatch it, I notice something else, or I'm like, oh, I never put those things together until now.
Yes. Who do you most relate to?
I have to say, probably, if I had to pick someone, it would probably be the lady police officer. Because I'm there, I just want to help. Like, I'm trying to make sure you don't get stuck on the cliff in the first place. And then when your silly self goes in there, I'm going to go after and see if you're okay and what I can do. Don't really want to get burned at the stake, but I guess that's a risk that we take when we're trying to help. I say I identify most with her, but the male cop, the detective, I empathize towards his character the most because I really do believe that he's like, this place sucks. I'm trying to help. And then I think that's the worst position to be in is when you realize you're in a bad environment, you're trying to make it better, but anything you do just gets squashed over and over. And that happens all the time. We're not just talking about trauma here. Like, you know, in school, in the workplace, in our family units, in our friendship groups, in our societal groups and subgroups, you can say, okay, this is not working. Let's try and make it better. How do we make sure that this example doesn't happen again? Like, even a customer comes in, they order vanilla ice cream with chocolate sprinkles, and for some reason they're giving vanilla ice cream with a maraschino cherry on top. The customer's upset. And then they scream at the boss. This boss screams at all of the employees. And then you have the one employee who's like, well, how do we make sure we don't get yelled at again? We have to make sure that the customer gets exactly what they order. But everyone at the ice cream shop is so used to just doing the bare minimum to get by that no one wants to institute the behavior modification, right? So that's something that happens across the board everywhere. And I think it just makes it difficult for the people that really want positive change because at the end of the day, as individuals, we're one person. We can only do so much as individuals. And getting others on board is very helpful and very important. It's just whether or not that's an option available. And sometimes we can't control that.
Ooh, thank you for sharing. That was deep. Thank you. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
I also appreciate, I really find it interesting that you chose the detective and the cop. I relate to Rose and Sean Bean, so the other male-female dynamic. So it feels like we each picked up on these different archetypes and then how they manifest. Because I feel like Rose, if anything happened to my kiddo, I'd be in there looking for her. I don't know if I would take her up there, and I'm kiddo, if you're listening to this, please drop a comment and tell me, as my child, would I, as your mom, take you to Silent Hill in the first place? Because I have a feeling that she would have an opinion about if I would or wouldn't.
I can't wait.
But I feel like Sean Bean, when he, when he's like, did you read about this place? I feel like that sense of like rational thought, and still both of them doing what they can to save Sharon. So that's just trying to get in there and like be the detective, like Sean Bean. I feel like in my daily life, I'm like always looking like, what's the clues? What can we find? What's going on?
Absolutely. It is really neat that we both picked up on the male-female characters that are kind of paired together in a sense that have similar positions, right? Because the two parental figures and then the two authoritative quote unquote figures. It's really kind of cool that we did that. Yes. All right. So the other question I have, do you think that Silent Hill should go on forever?
In like looking at the people and if I feel like they need to be punished forever?
Yeah, like the extent of Alyssa's rage, should those that caused her pain be there forever?
So I would say that's a tough question because I kind of want them to. Like the vengeful part of me really wants them to be punished. I also think it would be nice if they could be free, like learn their lesson. I feel like
Yeah.
if they learn and understand, then I don't want them to be punished forever.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say?
I think I'm on the same page with you. I think part of them being free too also means that Alyssa has healed, and that would
Mm-hmm.
be a wonderful
Yes.
thing as well. Because I think as
Yeah.
have you seen the sequel?
I haven't.
Okay, so let me know when you see it and what you think. But we learn more about, I don't know if I would call it her healing journey in the second one. Um, yeah, so you'll have to let me know when you watch it and what you think. And anyone
We'll
who's
have to do a cast about it.
yeah, definitely. Well, and anyone who's seen the second one, let me know your thoughts about Alyssa as we learn more too. Just interested because some of the dynamic is very different than what I expected when I saw the second one. But it's good. It's like a good surprise, but it's just very different.
And I want to just go back real quick. I really appreciate how you mentioned that when she frees them, she herself is freeing
Mm-hmm.
herself. Like she is then healed. She say they no longer have power
Mm-hmm.
over her. They no longer have say in
Mm-hmm.
her, that in this experience, she is the director, she is the
Yeah.
creator of her experience. And she's saying, this happened and I get the
Yeah.
final say, which I think is so empowering. So thank you for like sharing that.
Well, and thank you for mentioning that too, because I had thought about this earlier, and I'm glad that you said that. So many times through trauma, we just think, oh, well, if only I confronted my abuser or the person that hurt me, then I'll be better. That's not what happens. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's my opinion. One of the worst things that an individual can do is confront their abuser because one, you're putting yourself in danger again. Two, you're going to feel better for about 60 seconds, and then you're still going to have the same trauma work that needs to be done. And so for me, I really struggle when I see people who are like, I just need to confront this person, then everything's going to be better. I'm going to be healed, because knowing the reality of what healing entails. And oftentimes, when someone is at that point, it's very difficult to suggest other options to them. I don't know, in your experience, what are some ways to kind of encourage people to implement a healing journey that does not involve looking back? And I think in life, no matter what the experience, sometimes it's like driving a car. If you spend the whole time looking in the rearview mirror, you're going to miss out on the passengers that are with you right now. And also, you're not going to see what runs out right in front of you, and it can really put you in a lot of danger.
Yes. As a trauma therapist and somebody that does somatic therapies, I don't see it so much as like looking in the rearview mirror. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
we are going back there. We are
Yeah.
taking the body back somatically. We're helping the body to release what it couldn't do. Did it need to fight? Did it need to flee? Did it need to do something? And it's beautiful how our body can tell what it needed. Also, if we need to get angry, like not going to confront them,
Mm-hmm.
how does that happen in the therapeutic session? Because oftentimes we'll get there. Oh, I want to tell them, blah, 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 blah. Ooh, how was that? Like you said, then we confront them in person. We do it therapeutically.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes it's like, no, because I know they don't think they did anything wrong.
Yeah.
No, I don't feel better. What would feel better? I really needed this. I really needed that. It's a lot like in thanatology when we look at traumatic
Yeah.
grief. What happened? What didn't happen? How do we heal those so we get those things now? How do we make sense of what happened to us? And like you said, not look in the rearview mirror. How am I visiting that?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it takes a lot of time. So
Yeah.
listeners, this is not depending on your trauma. This is not like a one therapy session thing. This is, we go back, we work on it because we all have a different threshold. for what we can tolerate, what my psyche, what my body can tolerate. And even just going back, maybe we look at the book of our trauma. Okay, maybe that's all we could do today. What are the chapters? What is in there? How do we, because you'll notice a change. Like it is yeah, I tell you, if I had a magic wand, I would wave it and your trauma would be gone. And we don't live in a world that is trauma free. And I feel like a lot of us that do carry traumas, either people use them to hurt others or they have this deep empathy. They just have this deeper understanding of the world, and they're beautiful people. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think there's a lot to be said that the people out there that really try to consider others and make sure that other people don't feel bad, they're not intentionally hurting other people, a lot of the time it's because those individuals have been so mistreated and so hurt themselves. They know what that feels like. They don't want anyone else to experience or go through it. And with the thanatological aspect, I think that, and let me know if I'm not saying this in the right way. I'm hoping I do. Margaret and I have had very intense grief experiences as individuals. So our position is to be here. And those of you who are listening, we want to support you as our audience to make sure you don't feel like you have to go through this alone.
Yes, I agree. Grief is one of the most isolating experiences it can be. We could look at how isolated Sharon is in her grief, Alyssa is in her grief, even Rose in supporting Sharon in her grief, how isolated it can be when you're going through this and people aren't understanding. We can see where Rose is frustrated with Sean Bean's character because she doesn't feel like he's understanding, and he's frustrated with her because they're processing it differently.
Absolutely. And even I think it's so illustrative when we look at Alessa's biological mom. She is completely isolated. She is isolated from society, from her community, even on some level from her daughter. And a lot of that is in relation to her grief over the entire situation.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I do have a question, and part of this is because Margaret knows this because, we've recorded this a couple of times. I don't live that far from the town that Silent Hill is based on. So I'm a few hours away. If you had the opportunity, would you visit that town?
Yeah. I would. Would you?
Oh, it's super cool. Yeah. So
I love history. I love ghost stories. I think we both agree ghosts are just another component of grief, and they have stories to tell and they want to be remembered. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so who knows? Maybe this upcoming year we'll have the opportunity to hit a couple of fun spots and live stream and let you guys know what's going on. Stay tuned to find out. But until then, keep gaming. Make sure you close your coffin lid tight. Drink your Brewhob brew. And don't forget,
like, subscribe, follow, comment.
And until next time, we'll see you on the dark side.
Thanks for watching and listening.